Ladies and gentlemen, guys and girls, we have a wonderful show planned for you guys. As you can see, Lee Edwards has joined us, which means we are going to continue the Alexander the Great series as we promised if we can get Lee on the show. And Lee is joining us from the Ronald McDonald House. So thank you, Lee, for taking the time to join us. I mean, great. Before we get started, of course, how are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. Living up in the hospital for over a month now. So my brain's a little fried, and I will admit that I do notes for these shows. And unfortunately, my notes are back at home, and I live in a hospital right now. So,
all right. That's all right. Well, we'll do the best we can to deliver a good show regardless. And Aiden, how you doing, buddy?
Well, I've got to do the weather report. It's nice outside, so we're all doing good over here. This is still giving me issues, but things happen. Got to move on.
All right.
And a little bit less than what Lee's going through. So.
All right, sounds great. All right, so before we get into today's part, it's been a while since we were not together, so let's just catch up with what we were talking about. Let's do a little bit of a catch up. So we were talking about Alexander the Great and his father Phillip II of Macedon, and we were talking about how Philip II kind of set the scene for his son to become this, big time conqueror. And we were talking about how, Philip II kind of built the building blocks of the Macedonian Empire that eventually, and his relationships with the Thracians and his nearby neighbors. So, basically, what I want to get into today is his relationship with Alexander the Great himself. What was the relationship between Philip II and his son? Because, we always talk about Alexander the Great and Philip II separate, but what was their actual relationship like? I was always curious. I mean, I did some research on there, but, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Aiden.
So I always got the impression that it was very much it was almost a stepfather level thing of this isn't my son, but this is my son type of situation going on. That he wanted to make him obviously the best that he could be because he was a potential heir, but we're looking at from that situation of Philip is not quite happy about that, mainly because of his wife.
Right.
Really. So he's got that contention there going on. But essentially he's looking at Alexander as that's the potential heir, that's the guy that's going to take over, so I'll teach him some stuff. But his stepson level stuff of he's not my son as such, even though he is obviously, but it's that level of treatment that's going on. And I think the way that Alexander treated Philip as well made a modification to that situation. That there was a bit of contention in that he treated him well, but not quite well enough type of thing of like, it's probably going to be my heir, but I don't want him to rock up and kill me at a party with his mates, which ironically happened. So, yeah.
I was going to say something interesting. I was doing some research. I looked up this article from the History Channel. I know we might make fun of the History Channel, but on occasion, they deliver some pretty good nuggets of history still. It's not all bad with the History Channel. I went to the website.
They do, yeah.
And this is interesting. And Philip II was murdered in 336 BC. He didn't die of natural causes. He was murdered. And the thing is, the facts of his murder are plain and undisputed. All right. They watched from a crowd as one of his bodyguards assassinated Philip II. But there's a theory. There's a theory out there that perhaps Alexander the Great was the one who orchestrated his father's murder. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a curveball thrown in there. Obviously, we don't know who actually orchestrated the murder or what possessed, his bodyguard to kill Philip II. But some people say that his son was the one who did it out of grievance and greed. What
This
are your
is
thoughts
what I
about that?
was dancing around of the whole. He was clearly murdered. So, who murdered him is it's one of those mysteries that we will never know the true answer to. But the actual story that we're all told seems fairly legit. To be fair,
Yeah.
it's something that.
I mean, here's the article in question.
Yeah, it's very difficult to describe, but he's how that happened is an issue if you were in that situation. But quite frankly, 100% his wife did it. Like 100%, it's like she was involved in that situation, and she had him killed to create Alexander as what we know him today. Yeah.
Yes.
Lee, what do you reckon, Lee? It's
I'm
like
going-
I'm on 100% that his wife orchestrated this shit.
I'll start from the first thing with Angel there about the relationship. I've done a lot of reading on it, and
Okay.
it seems like historians are up and down on it. Some say, "Oh, he trained Alexander to be his heir. This is this." Then others were like, they didn't really get along. They coexisted like the sun and Earth, but they don't really get along. And if the sun blows up, Earth is gone, kind of thing.
Right.
And so you got the historians saying both things. And then going to the murder of Philip, I do believe what some historians said, and Aiden there, based on it, Alexander's mom had a thing to do with it because she is actually not from, if you remember, the same tribe, I guess you could say. She's not from the Macedonia thing there.
Yeah, she's
And-
Illyrian, I believe.
Yeah, Illyrian. I couldn't remember the name, so thank you. So when Philip fathered another son from another woman, she was afraid Alexander's going to get skipped over because people were already saying, well, Alexander's not a pureblood because she's not from here. So I do believe that she had a hand in it. Alexander may have helped her and had a hand in it to get this done, but
this is where my stepdad thing comes in. Yeah.
Yep. And I think the mom and even could be Alexander had a hand in getting Philip II out of there, so that way the sun goes brighter, if you will. So.
Yeah, well, Alexander himself blamed, he later accused the Persian king of arranging the murder, and he actually used that as a catalyst for conquering Persia. He used that as a catalyst to go march into Persia and conquer, because he blamed the Persian king for orchestrating the murder. So, yeah, I mean, there's some possible connecting of the dots here. Alexander the Great planned his father's murder. He would blame the Persian king, and then he would march into Persia and conquer it in the name of his father, even though, he was really the one behind it.
I did read a couple other conspiracy theories, which we're going to get on in a few episodes of conspiracy theories. But they say that the mom had nothing to do with it. Alexander had nothing to do with it. But it was his generals got involved, and they wanted to do it because they wanted to control the army. And they thought if they killed him soon enough, Alexander is illegitimate, and his other son was so young that they could take control of the Macedonian army and Macedonia themselves. So they orchestrated his death as well.
After what we talked about last episode, that seems fairly legitimate as well, because they're looking at invading Persia at some point and taking back Anatolia. But it's a situation where they won a load of wars, and they're very good at this, of fighting these wars and putting these people down. And you got these generals that have got this being their body off. Yeah, we're really good at this stuff, so we could do this. So there is a possibility of that. But it's actually, and this is what I was saying about it being no one quite knows what is happening, and that's a good theory of why it could have happened. Different to obviously Alexander and his mum bumping off dad. So
Yeah, this is a rabbit hole we could go down for probably 40, 50 episodes.
Yeah, I know.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Right. But,
It's just like, not to get ahead of myself, look at how
Yeah, I
Alexander
hear you.
died.
yeah.
Like, I've heard West Nile virus could have killed him because there was a lot of birds in the air, they said, the day he got sick and stuff like that. I mean, there's so many theories.
Died from COVID. That'd be an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't think that was it either. But I
Yeah.
No, I doubt it.
And here's where I got it. History Channel. They did a documentary, and they were like, how did Alexander die? And they said, from witnesses back then that they wrote in their book, that there was a lot of birds in the air the day he started getting sick. So could it have been West Nile? And once again, unfortunately, nowadays I have to look at the History Channel has not real history, because I mean, aliens, all that stuff that just is.
You might find something in a storage box.
Now, the only thing I'll say is that Alexander was 21 when he became king of Macedon, and it just seemed like everything fell on the snap conveniently. It was a very convenient thing to happen, As far as death just happened, it just happened, and then he swiftly ordered 2 potential rivals executed and sent orders to Asia Minor to of the elimination of another rival in Turkey. So it just seems so convenient that Philip II was assassinated, and then boom, here comes Alexander to take the realm. Only a few hours of his father's death, he took the throne. Like we didn't waste no time. We didn't wait a day or so. He just like that.
No, I believe it was actually less than a day he took the throne. Philip was dead, and within hours of our time, it was, oh, look who's king now. But one thing I want to point out is Alexander could have been working with the generals too, because if I remember right, Philip was slow playing the invasion of Persia, and his generals wanted to go now. Yeah, and the generals wanted to go now. He was slow playing it. And how fast did Alexander, when he killed those rivals, how fast did he go for Persia? And he blamed Persia, and he went fast. So could he have been working with the generals to goodbye Philip II so we can go to Persia?
Not wanting to bring up modern politics, but we see it often, even in the modern times, of people using excuses for an invasion of a thing that, oh, they did this, and then they get it, and then everyone gets angry about that, and then they go and do said invasion. It could have been, quite frankly, the same situation. The Romans were, quite frankly, famous for this stuff. They're like, oh, well, those people are bad. Let's go and invade them. And everyone was like, yay, let's go invade them. And it all went horribly sometimes. And it went very good for the Romans sometimes. But this is before that. The Romans were doing that. So that was a thing that had always been a thing, and we still do it now, which is obviously pushing it forward. So quite frankly, it doesn't actually lend weight to it that he did. It's because he had a good excuse to do said thing that does that. As Lee, as you say, it's a his dad wanted to, and he was like, "Oh, we got to. Well, how are we going to do this?" And then they did.
Yep.
So it doesn't abrogate his responsibilities and everything like that. But
since I can't get on the internet right now because I have to use my phone for the hotspot here at the hospital, if one of you want to look it up, how fast after Philip II's death did Macedonia go after Persia?
I think Angel's got this for us.
Yep. Because I just, not that
it was super quick.
Yeah, I'm not saying we're going to find a definitive answer, but if it was King Philip's dead, rivals were killed, Persia, it kind of starts making sense because the generals wanted it.
Well, here's the thing. The actual date that he started the war, the actual war was 334 BC, according to what I looked up. So not quite after his father's death. His father's death was 2 years before.
Yeah, but think about this. They don't have cars back then. They don't have planes. By the time he kills his rivals in Turkey and
True.
Egypt and all that, and then the writers get back to say it's done. And then they formulate and move the armies.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
You know?
But they say 334 BC is when the actual war was declared. It was 334 BC, around there. That's what they. That's what they.
We've also got to take into account that Philip also had this plan. As Lee has said, Philip already had this plan in process, and he'd already attempted this, but hadn't quite done it yet, because it was all to do with getting the right generals in the right place to do the right thing. And this is part of the process of taking a country.
Alexander the Great and Philip II were no dummies, and I guarantee they're not going to. Alexander isn't stupid enough to be like, "Oh, dead, go." He, like you said, Philip wanted to get the right generals in there. They were almost there with Philip. Philip was just dragging his feet, but they were almost there. So when Alexander took over, Philip had already done 90% of the work, but dragged his feet on the last 10.
Yes.
So Alexander only had 10% to do to get those. And then again, Alexander the Great is no dummy. So he's going to get his armies ready before he declares the war. He's not going to be like, Philip's dead, war. He's going to get that last 10% done. He's going to make sure everything's good. He's going to make sure those rivals are dead. And back then, it's not instant. They can't call on the phone and be like, hey, Alexander, I got this guy. We're good to go.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair point. Right.
Go all the way back. So I think for 2 years back then, I think that's a pretty fast time.
But here's something else to consider. I'm sorry, Nate, but something else to consider is that he started to declare war and take over the Balkans in 335 BC. He started to take over the Balkans, the area around Greece, like modern day Croatia, Slovenia, all those Serbia, all those areas.
All of those bits sort of north of Macedonia. The whole reason for taking them is you don't want to lose your main core stronghold when you're going there. We all know, it's like, not to belittle it, but we've all played computer games. You don't want to lose your core stronghold. So you need to create a barrier while you're off doing something else.
Yep.
And that's what he was doing while he was creating that situation of this area is now stable. Therefore, I can go and do these things. Under Philip was creating the stable situation. His invasions of Greece, working with the different leagues, all of that was all to do with making sure that his southern border was stable so that he could go off and invade the Persian Empire. That was all it was. And he even stated that. That's a thing that, and we've talked about this, this is a thing that he wanted to do. He was always wanting to do this. He was setting up that. And as Lee said, that he set everything up for Alexander to do his thing. So settling Greece, and then all Alexander had to do was settle the northern parts, and then he could go off and invade Persia. And that is the crux of the matter, really. It's like he was going to do that come hell or high water. He was invading Persia.
Now, I want to ask you guys: have you guys ever seen the movie Alexander, the 2004 movie with Oliver Stone? It was considered a box office bust.
Yeah.
Do you know there's 3 versions of that movie?
Yeah, I think
any of them good?
I enjoyed the long one. There's one that's like 4 hours long or something like that. I actually enjoyed that one, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. And he took a lot of liberties with it. So as a movie, great has to look at that and be like, oh my God, Alexander did. But no.
So standard film stuff where you don't take history from films.
Yeah, but it was considered a box office, bust. It didn't do too good in the box office. They didn't make too much money, and it wasn't. A lot of people didn't say it was very good. So, but I thought I'd bring it up. I thought I'd bring up the movie since it does talk about Phillip II and Anna Sanders. So, I just thought I'd bring it up. But I think there's also one that released in 1956 as well. That one I never saw.
Yeah, that one I've seen it. It's actually historically more factual than the new one, but it's still a terrible movie.
That one came out in the United States and Spain, which is why you've probably never heard of it, Aiden, because they only released it in the States and in Spain. Ironically, it came out in Spain for some reason
instead of Greece, but they probably didn't want Macedonians and Greece to see.
It never came out in Greece though.
1950s. That would have been former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. That would have been that would have been Soviet Union stuff.
Yeah. But you're talking about the 1954 one that was overacted, over dramatized.
Well, I mean, it was the 50s. Well, I mean,
1950s film overacted.
You can say the same thing about Cleopatra. You could say the same thing about Cleopatra as well, or do I dare say Carnegie? You can say the same thing about those movies.
I still haven't watched that. Mea culpa, but I still haven't watched it.
I mean, back then those movies had a pretty bad reputation being overacted in general. History movies back then. I don't know if you've seen the Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah, same thing with that one.
Yeah,
great film, absolutely amazing film because British and we win.
But yeah, I mean, you're biased though.
What a terrible film it was because it was British and they win.
But I mean, that's been Aiden's, savor in a victory there. Even though I really didn't like the movie myself, I thought
100% biased so badly.
Well, see, I really liked the Patriot with Mel Gibson because the British lose. But yes, get back on point.
You don't talk about the Patriot.
Yeah, see, you kind of hit below the belt there.
That's below.
But anyway, let's try to get back on subject.
Get back on subject. The 2004 film has a movie. It was okay, but they took something that was this big and turned it to this big of too much. I think they filled it too much with stupid romance. Too much.
Well, yeah, of course.
Too much sex and stuff. They should have just told the story and not dramatized stuff to this hilt that should have only been this much.
Yeah, we didn't need to see Colin Farrell's ball sack. Like that is the classic complaint about the film.
And here's what I think.
I liked where they did that it was being a told story as well. So they got some other historical characters in. I think that could have been really good if they'd have done that properly. But it kind of didn't work the way they did it. It was sort of like an opener into the thing as well. So
I think the worst actor in that movie was Angelina Jolie and her ridiculous accent. That was terrible. And just her character, her portrayal of his mom made no sense. She did it completely, I think, wrong, but that wasn't probably her. That was the writing. But what was her was the acting. And that acting was terrible. She herself almost killed that film.
You don't need to do an accent in a film that's set that far back. Everyone knows that you're not speaking that language. You're not going to get accent right. Just use how you normally speak. That's the thing. I mean, I quite liked her portrayal, but it was so historically inaccurate. It was really bad.
Now it's a fun fact, Aiden. Going back to one of my favorite all-time games, World Total War, did the expansion pack, and the Alexander expansion pack for World Total War. You could actually play as Phillip II in a battle. the Battle of Chaiwona in 338 BC. You could actually play that battle, and you have to play a Philip II.
I didn't realize you could do that. That is awesome.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I rarely played the Alexander expansion pack. To be honest, it was my least favorite of the expansion packs because that one you could only play as Alexander. You couldn't play as the Persians or anyone else. You were never and the thing I didn't like about it, although it was realistic, you had to conquer all of Persia within a certain amount of turns. Without to match Alexander's conquest in 10 years. So you only had a certain amount of turns to complete the campaign, or you lost. But
so it's more can you be better than Alexander? And
basically,
frankly,
yeah.
like
Basically.
most of us can't. It's like he was stupidly good. It's like no one knows why he was so good. No one knows how he was so good. If they knew how he was so good, like West Point and Sandhurst to be teaching that every day, and they do teach about him every day, but they don't have that answer of this guy was this good because of this reason. There is no reasoning there to show how good he was as well.
But I wanted to show you the battle you could play in Rome Total War Alexander with Philip II. It's this battle, the Battle of Chaiona. Chaiwon. Yeah, I have my pronunciation sucks, but in 338 BC, it's when he took on Athens Thebes. He pretty much conquered the Greece. Is when he put the hammer down on Greece, and it was considered one of the most.
Yeah.
It was considered one of the most decisive victories in the ancient world. It was that decisive, and so he had 30,000 infantry, 2,000 cavalry, while the enemy had 35,000 soldiers, and
what was he fighting against? Can you go down on that to show what?
Basically, what happened was the Macedon establishes control over the majority of southern Greece, except Sparta. So you basically got control of Athens, Thebes, the two major parts of the Greeks.
You got Athens, Thebes, and Sparta. Are the
No,
main
not Sparta. No, not Sparta.
He doesn't do Sparta, but he does the other two. That's enough. He's got 2/3 of that.
And this was the location of the battle. It showed a dot though. They showed a dot. So around this, where my mouse is, around this area, right there. I don't know if you can see that.
See your mouse, but I can point on my screen, which isn't helpful.
Yeah, there it is. I can see it barely.
Yeah, it was around that area. That's the battle I'm referring to. That's where you can play. You have to guide Philip II to victory against the Greeks, the enemy. And it's the one and only time you play as Philip II in that particular game. By the way, Aiden, it's the only game. It's the only time you play as Philip II. And you can also play with him. There's a game. I don't know if you heard of it. I think it's. Let me see if I can share the screen. Let me see. Hold on. Share the screen. I never played it, but I heard of it. It's kind of a lesser known game. Wars of Ancient Greece. Himamoni Gold. Wars of Ancient Greece. It's a lesser known game you could play at. You play as the Philip of Macedon and Alexander the Great. You conquered Greece and then Persia. So Philip II doesn't get as many. So even in the game world, Philip II doesn't get as much love as Alexander the Great, even in video games.
Which tags back to what we were talking about on the last episode of that you don't see these great things happening within the game world. Obviously, that's all. Go watch the last episode, people, of this happening. But with Philip is his good battles and the things that he does set up so much for Alexander. It's the whole Nepo baby thing that's going on at the moment in the sort of like Hollywood and everything like that is the Nepo baby thing. Alexander, 100% one of those. It's like he wouldn't have been able to do anything if Philip hadn't have been there. It's like I think Philip is actually more important than Alexander was.
Yeah,
I think that's what we're always trying to get to here.
If you think about it, the two, Philip played the long game. If you can say, Philip was playing a long game. Let's get everything set. Let's go.
Exactly.
Everything set. Let's go. Where Alexander was like, everything set. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
But Philip already had this much set for him to do this much. So I would agree with that. With Macedonia, I would say that Philip was more important than Alexander. But history will always say Alexander was great and Philip II was.
And again, this is the bias we were talking about, Aiden, in a previous episode. The bias.
Yes. You don't hear about certain people, but
I think part of the bias, Aiden, is because we just don't have as many records from Philip II. And now the records we have are from Alexander the Great. Philip II, he has some records, but not as many. There just wasn't as many. So here's the thing I'm saying. Like we say we have bias today. I would go as far. I would take it a step further and say there was bias even back then. There was bias.
Oh yeah,
like you will only report on certain things if it benefits. Like even look at today, everything you see in the media. You have to take it with a grain of salt because there's not a bias in today's media. I'm sure it's the same thing in the United Kingdom as well. All the bias.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's.
One of the
things that adds to what you're saying is the first battle in history is between the Egyptians and I can't remember who they were, but another group of people, Anatolia area, they're coming down. Both
the Hittites,
Hittites. Both claimed victory. Both claimed victory on that. So
the battle you're talking about is the Battle of Kadesh. That's the battle you're talking about.
It's a man who knows his stuff.
He's over there.
That way. He's that way.
The Battle of Kadesh. But you're right though. Each side claimed victory. You're right.
Yeah. It's you've got to. It's what happens afterwards that's the thing. So with Alexander, it's one of the big issues that I think that we have with this is we look at it as who did the most impact to the world. Like Alexander conquered an insane proportion of the world, whereas Philip conquered a small proportion of the world as we see it. However, he set up the ability for Alexander to do that proportion of taking out those people and making sure they were under his rule. And then as soon as he goes, bang, done, out the way, they go back to what they were before.
So with how fast Alexander did it, do you think Philip II was too cautious and he could have done it sooner himself?
Well, the thing is, I don't know if Philip II was cautious. I just think the problem with Philip II was that the Macedon Empire wasn't established. He had to deal with the Spartans. He had to deal with the Athenians, the Thebans, and then to the north you had the Thracians. Don't forget the Thracians, guys. The Thracians were also a threat.
The Romans had trouble with them as well. So
and if you ever play World Total War Aid in the original, it has a really good depiction of the Thracians to the north and the Macedonians in the center. And you start in the year 270. Okay, I mean we're talking about already you got the Seleucid Empire. You're jumping ahead, but even in 270 BC, the Macedonians still had trouble with the Thracians. You still had trouble with them. So I wouldn't say he was too cautious. I think what happened with Philip was that he was a little early. He had established the empire, Alexander had a big head start over his father because when Alexander took over, all he had to do was just conquer the rest of Greece, which was in ruins thanks to his father, and then just boom right into Persia. It was just easier.
How fast he went into the Balkans, Alexander.
Yeah, he went there pretty fast. But again, it's because his father didn't. Again, it's because his father didn't have to work for him. So I would say his father was cautious. I would actually say the opposite. I think his father would have done the same thing if he was given the proper chance. I think he just had too much to deal with. He had to establish everything. He
literally had a general, an army lined up to invade Persia before he died. He already had that set up so that he could do that thing.
Now,
I don't think that Philip would have got so far, personally.
Do you think
Alexander needed?
Go ahead.
If Philip would have went to the Balkans faster, so he could have done Persia, do you think he would have survived? Do you think maybe if it was for the generals, if it was for the wife, no matter what, he's dead. But if we go with the general thing and they wanted war, do you think they would have really killed him if he would have went faster and went into the Balkans to?
It's a good question, me.
Balkans, no. Persia, yes.
Go ahead, Aiden.
So the way I think about it, so they didn't really understand the whole setup thing. It's like you got military personnel. They're designed and their thought process is to let's go and invade somewhere. Let's go and have a fight. That's what they're for. It's like up to today again is what they're for. But in this situation, I think that Philip was toning them down. They didn't want that tone down of the sensible situation of we need to set all of this up so that we can go and do this. They didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. So I think there is, this is what I said before, like there is some merit into the generals having an impact on getting rid of him. I think if Philip had been left alone to do the thing, he would have easily settled the northern area, like he settled the southern area, and he already had an army and generals set up to go east and hit up Persia. But he knew he wasn't young enough to be able to do that. You needed someone younger to do that. Yeah. He wasn't particularly old, but it was he's fought in so many wars. You think about it. He'd lost an eye. He'd lost was it his leg that was completely destroyed? Like he needed someone who was in full physical health to be able to do that thing. So you need to rely on a general. Having his son do it was a good thing, and that's why I think that this comes back full circle round to why someone decided to get rid of him. And Alexander's mother was possibly impactful on that. Because I 100%, to be fair, Alexander's mother, I think probably could have done this as well. I think she'd have been just as good at this. She probably could have done all of that. It's that she decided to get rid of him. And yes, I know I'm shitting on her, but I really think that she fucking killed him. It's really, like, if you look at all the evidence, she did. She had a hand in that. But she could have done that. However, at the time as it is, a woman was not allowed to lead all those armies. I think she'd have done better than Alexander. I think she'd have probably got to China, to be fair. What do you think about that, Lee? Do you think the Alexander's mother could have led the armies if given?
I think she could have, but I don't know. Going through India. I don't know if she makes it out of India either.
It's getting over the Indus River. That's the difficult bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's a tough question. I know,
Yeah.
Dave. It's a tough question. It really is.
Yeah, come in with the incisive comments.
I mean, if you think of it back then, did they really ever see an elephant before they went into India?
I mean,
Imagine coming in on your horses thinking, I'm the cavalry. And then all of a sudden here comes, 20 people on 20 elephants that are smashing right through what you thought was great horses.
You've also got to remember they've also fought in Africa, which has African elephants, obviously, which are larger than the Indian elephants. But I really don't know. I think you're right on this. It's like those African elephants are rare. You have to go down past the Sahara and then go onto the plains south of Sahara to really get to that area where they're going to be an issue.
I mean, if you think about it, in Africa, they've probably only seen a dozen or so elephants, and then they get to India, and those guys are riding them like the horses. Boom, 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 you know what I mean?
It's like,
and then just think about just
you
the
guys got
manpower
donkeys,
India has too.
You got goddamn elephants. Like, piss off me. No, I agree. Yeah. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Carry on.
But but honestly, going back to the subject, Phillip II, the battle we were talking about when Lee was gone. In case you missed it, we were talking about the Battle of Chirona, which was, and do we go to the APC? It's when Phillip II kind of got control of Greece. That was pretty much the biggest war. That was pretty much the war that made Phillip II that we know today. You can look it up. It's considered the biggest, it's pretty much the big. I can't say the biggest margin of victory. It's the most decisive battle in the ancient world. Ancient world being before the classical era, because the classical era was after Alexander the Great. Is what we consider the classical era of antiquity. We're still in ancient times.
I think this is the thing. Also, we've got to think about with Alexander that he's in between two eras. We normally think of the classical era as sort of ancient Greece and all of the ancient stuff, and then we think classical era is Romans. Where does really he fit within that mold? It's like he doesn't really fit within that. I think he's been. Like, people have got onto him. It's like having the Napoleonic era, for example, that we've latched onto that as it's Napoleon that controlled things. But there's not really an Alexandrian era. And I think his crossover between those two, I think, is one of those things. But I think then Philip also falls by the wayside by the same thing of his end of classical era stuff. So we're not really talking about him. We're talking about what he has done for his son. It's like there's a his impact is what we're talking about, not him and himself personally. His impact is what we're talking about. Obviously, there's very
I would
little,
love on the next episode to do a deep dive on Philip II and him in the relationship with Athens.
Oh, dear God, yeah. Athens were basically a bunch of dickheads. I'm sorry, but the more I read about Athens, the more I am convinced of this fact. Athens is basically a repository of arseholes.
I mean, I think of it this way, Ethan. Athens is like Sparta is they're like the big, the big bad warriors. They take no BS. The Athenians are like they're like the Kardashians, right? If you want to a pop culture reference, the Kardashians, I'm too good for you, like this and that. They might the stuck up. The stuck-up rich people that you just don't care, that you just want to get in there and throttle.
Athens was France during World War II.
What was that mean?
I said Athens are like the French during World War II.
But yeah, I mean, if you really want the absolute simple definition, the difference between Sparta and Athens, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Athens were like, we're too good for you. We're our philosophers. We might to believe in a higher power and all that.
See,
Spartans are like,
this is
screw that. We're going to just stab our way in and bust our way through.
but this is the big thing that we've got as well with that situation of most of the stuff that we know is Athenian. It's that's where it comes from. They were the people who sat down and wrote. Like the Spartans weren't exactly sitting down and writing treaties on various things, but the Athenians were. It's like it's the situation you've got in the US at the moment, where you've got someone who's a convicted felon, and then someone who is when people are not sure about, but things probably aren't going to go correct with. So you've only got two choices in that matter. This is like the Athenians. It's that situation of we're hearing it from, well, I call it as it is, the Democrat side. We're hearing it from the Democrat side. We're not hearing it from the Republican side so much. So we're hearing that history from one specific side in that situation. And I think that is causing some of these issues. And this is the basis for really what we're talking about. We have this level of discourse over something that only has one source from one side. It's like there's no Spartans sitting there. There's when you get, obviously there are some sources. Obviously when Phillip comes in, you get some of those sources as well. But realistically, this is the victor writes the history situation as well. So I think, and this is, sorry to bring it back up with modern politics, I think this is very analogous to modern US politics at the moment. Of there are two sides, they just can't agree on anything at all. They've just got one thing here and they've got one thing there, and they'll just argue against it either way. But if you take that back to a historical period, we've only got one of those sides. So if the modern time was taken back, we would only have that from, for example, either the Democrat or the Republicans. That is what we're looking at here. That we have to just look at how they're talking about it, rather than how the other side is taking it as well. And that's why I brought up the analogy, because it's a good way of going, or this side have a disagreement, but that's probably not going to settle down in history. So carry on, guys, and cover over modern politics, please.
Yeah, I wanted to show you one more. I wanted to show you guys something. Give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen. This is a victory medallion bearing King Philip II. Look, in the
that
third
looks
century.
so much like Hadrian. That looks like Hadrian.
Well, to be fair, this was made in the 3rd century AD, which is why this was made in the Eastern Roman Empire.
That's probably what it looks like Hadrian.
But you know, but the thing about it, they didn't got me. None of these guys look similar. Like Adrian, they look like Phillip. You know, they look similar. Trust me. Some of these guys look similar.
That's a very good point, actually.
They look
Hadrian
similar.
and Phillip, very similar. Lee, what do you reckon on this whole Hadrian Phillip thing?
Oh, they definitely look alike, and then there's other people we can bring up onto the side of them, and I guarantee they all look so similar.
I mean, do I say Nero? He looks like a little bit like Nero.
See, I was going to say Nero, but I wasn't going to go that far. But yeah, it does look a little bit like Nero.
But this is the thing, and this is exactly what I was getting at. That we're getting this all from this essentially coins were propaganda. through the ancient world. It's the only way that you could easily pass what you did to another part of the empire under the Romans. But within Greece as well, that then became the thing later on, obviously. With having an empire that spans all the way to India, it's the same thing. You're talking about a guy that, like, Alexander is going to make himself the guy. So that then obviously means that Philip is sort of pushed down because Alexander needs to be the person. So anything that Philip did, we discard that and just claim Alexander did this. And that is a reason I think that we learn so little about Philip rather than Alexander. Not that we learn much about Alexander either, but
I mean, to be fair, even in school, I mean, even when I took global history in high school, we didn't know too much about Philip. It was Alexander the Great. Again, the bias. So and by the way, guys, there's one more thing I wanted to show you. Let me bring it up on the screen. This was constructed. It was ordered to be constructed by Philip II. This is the Philippine, which was constructed after the battle of back in 338 BC when he took over Greece. He built this as a victory memorial, just like you have just like in ancient Rome, you got the Arch of Triumph, and in ancient Rome, this was his version of the Arch of Triumph. This was he built this to commemorate his victory and basically the beginnings of the actual Macedonian Empire, the expansion of it.
And that is a thing that people should do these days. You go and invade a country, start building stuff, because that, I reckon, in its full glory, would have been absolutely beautiful. This is one of the things as well that we're looking at. This is so many thousands of years ago, yet we've still got this evidence. We've still got this physical stuff that we can look at. Angel, you put it up on screen. This is stuff that we can look at and go, all right, cool, that guy did good things and he made his mark on here. I think that's part of with Philip is, what did he really do like this? Because we get a lot of our evidence from this type of thing. Philip didn't go around doing that. Realistically, what can we bring up that Philip did?
What was that?
He's talking about did Philip ever build like memorials and stuff, and that's why we don't see him in the same light as Alexander the Great, because Alexander had stuff like this built, and well, Philip II didn't. So you don't see these big monuments to Philip II because he just didn't build them.
Yeah, but to be fair, this was the only monument he had in his name of Philip II. This is the only thing he got to build before he was killed. Yeah, so
this is a very simple,
the bias.
Small thing. Yeah.
Think about he kept naming towns after himself, Alexandria. So I mean, he left a mark in many, many ways. Where Philip II, I don't think.
To be fair, we do have Philippolis, which was renamed to, I don't remember what it was renamed to, but yeah, no, I agree with you, Lee. It's we see this so that we answer, and for the average person who isn't studying history, you need to see stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff matters when it's a big physical thing that you can go and have a look at. Look, Stonehenge is a classic example of this. You can go and look at Stonehenge and you think about the people that built it. But if you weren't building that type of thing, no one's going to think about you. So all of the thousands of said years in between Stonehenge and then we got Tower of London, for example, like in between that, realistically, we've got very little in the UK that hits those points in between.
Mm-hmm.
See, my favorite was actually Hadrian's Wall.
Hadrian's Wall, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we all love Hadrian's Wall.
The going back to the modern thing, I know we don't have a lot of time, but like we're talking about how If you build monuments, you'll be known. You can have two movies if we go in movie things. And one's by, say, Warner Brothers and one's by Angel Ramon. Warner Brothers is really known. Angel Ramone's isn't. This could be a piece of crap movie, but because Warner Brothers did it, it's going to make $400 million. Angel Ramone's could be an awesome movie. And they're the same subject. Angel Ramone's could be awesome. But since it's not Warner Brothers, nobody's heard of him. He's not getting theater love. He's going straight to on demand, where these people are making for a crap movie this much, and it's the name and what they've built is what we're getting at. So
exactly, This is the situation that we're really dealing with Phillip. He does so much stuff, but he doesn't leave anything physical behind that we can see. He doesn't leave anything visual that we can look at and go that bar the obvious. But it's a situation where Alexander just goes around and I've conquered this place. I want to do a thing. And we know about that. He's built some things. He's had an impact upon history from that perspective. From go all the way far over to India. But Phillip really didn't. He was kind of contained. It wasn't that he did worse. It was that he did all of the setup. I think that is the issue here. That it gets lost within everything else that Greece was doing. That we don't really see Phillip in these monuments and physical structures as much as we think we should do. Whereas Alexander is seen because he's pissed off to India and conquered everything too.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, we have reached the end of this episode. This was another really fun part 2 to this. So, yeah, we covered a lot of interesting things about Phillip and all that. So, before we go, I want to remind you guys, remind you viewers that me and Aiden are still working on our anthology for, a charity anthology. So, any updates for that? Anything you know about that?
It's going to be an October release. My story's done and turned in. I know your story's done and turned in. And I know a bunch of it is. So it's going to be really great. It's coming October. 100% of the proceeds are going to find a cure, if you will, find a better way for NKH kids. NKH is a rare disease that is a terminal illness, actually. And since there's less than 500 people in the world, we're pretty much blown off by anybody giving us anything. So us as parents raise money to do research to find a better way for our kids. So I appreciate the support of people buying this book.
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. I think DJ Cooper's taking care of the cover and all that, and the publishing as well. So,
are we going to throw the link in the comments as well? The link to help Lee out, obviously, with the costs at the moment as well. Being as Leah said, this is.
But anyway, guys, this is it, guys. This is the end. So hopefully Lee can join us next episode. We could continue the series. If not, of course, we'll have a backup topic. But until then, guys, we'll see you on the next Age of Warfare podcast. I'm Ashes Maximus. That's Lee Edwards. That's Aiden Cordier. We'll see you next time. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Take care.